Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's City Council. It is a big night for Sioux Falls, big night for South Dakota, and of course a big night for our country as well. But we're very glad to have all of you here tonight. We'll start our City Council meeting. Today is Tuesday, November 4th, by introducing you to your City Council.
Council members Anderson.
Here.
Erickson.
Here.
Erpenbach.
Here.
Jameson.
Here.
Karski.
Here.
Kiley.
Here.
Rolfing.
Here.
Staggers.
Very good. Thank you, Council. We start our meetings in Sioux Falls with an invocation. We're very blessed to have Care Pastor Reed DeVries of Celebrate Church here in Sioux Falls, one of the largest, one of the fastest growing churches in all of South Dakota. Pastor Reed, good to have you back. What we'd ask you to do is to stand for the invocation, and then after Pastor Reed is done with that, we'll then continue on with our Pledge of Allegiance. Pastor Reed, thank you again for being here.
Well, Father God, every day is a day for giving thanks, but especially on this election day, we pause to give extra thanks. We say thank you for your guiding hand that founded this country, for the wisdom that you gave our founding fathers in establishing Constitution and laws that govern how it should run. We thank you for the people of armed forces who over the years have protected our freedom and liberties, many times at the cost of their own lives. We thank you for the people who have served in various offices in the past and now in the present, and as Election Day closes here, even into the future. And Lord, we say thank you now for the people in this room, and we ask that you would give them great wisdom to make right decisions, no matter what the matter is, knowing that the decisions are not just about now, but also for generations to come. And so we thank you for all these things, and we say thank you most of all for your Son, Jesus Christ. We ask this in your name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's going on tomorrow.
Well, Council will now continue with our consent agenda. Any motions, changes?
Move for approval, Anderson.
Second, Rolfing.
Councilor Anderson Jr. has made a motion to approve our consent agenda, seconded by Councilor Rolfing. Any discussion? A roll call vote, please.
Council members Anderson.
Yes.
Erickson.
Yes.
Erpenbach.
Yes.
Jameson.
Yes.
Karski.
Yes.
Kiley.
Yes.
Rolfing.
Yes.
That is passed 7-0. Thank you. Our regular agenda. Council, any motions, changes?
Move to approve, Erpenbach.
Second, Anderson.
Councilor Erpenbach would like to approve tonight's regular agenda, seconded by Councilor Anderson Jr. If no discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Council members Anderson. Erickson. Erpenbach.
Yes.
Jameson.
Yes.
Karski.
Yes.
Kiley.
Yes.
Rolfing.
Yes.
That is also passed 7-0. Thank you. Again, welcome to tonight's City Council meeting. What a great turnout. Certainly pleased to have you all here. This is a great opportunity for you to actually engage the council on any topic that you think is important involving our city. All we'd ask you to do is just come forward. You can speak up to 5 minutes, and really all we ask is that you just introduce yourself to the people of our town. Would anybody be interested? Welcome.
Scott Erisman, Sioux Falls. I actually have a handout for the council, and I'd like it on the overhead if I could get some assistance on that.
Scott, go right ahead.
Recently, Council Chair Dean Karski attended an ethics meeting to ask them if it was okay for him to serve on the Sioux Falls Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. They said it would be okay because Dean proposed he would recuse himself from voting on any agenda items that were directly related to the Sioux Falls Chamber of Commerce. The Ethics Commission gave their approval because Dean said he would recuse himself. Tonight, I submit to you several agenda items that the council chair and Chamber of Board Directors member Dean Karski should recuse himself from due to conflicts of interest with members of the Sioux Falls Chamber of Commerce. By voting to allow the chamber members to do business with the city, you could assume a conflict of interest because Councilor Karski could give an unfair advantage to chamber members versus non-members. The concerning items are as follows. Item number 1, approval of contracts. Several chamber members are getting contracts with the city. They include Infrastructure Design Group, Sayer Associates, Vision Video, Stockwell Engineers, Short Elliott Hendrickson, Sokup Construction, Thompson Electric Company, Friesen Construction, and several other snowplow contractors. Item number 2, change orders. Chamber members include First Rate Excavate, Beckenhofer, Cryer, and Blaine. Fuel contracts, chamber member House Oil. Item number 10, liquor retail license renewal. Several businesses are 11 through 13, malt beverage transfers, chamber member Stapridge Suites. Item number 17, one-day wine license, chamber member Active Generations. Item number 18, one-day liquor license, chamber member Avera. And item number 28, water tank lease agreement, chamber members Sokup Construction, Sioux Falls Two-Way Radio. All other items concern internal city business, change in ordinances, or rezone housekeeping, and don't present a conflict for council chair and chamber board of directors, Dean Karski. Now I want to talk about something that happened this week. It's been going on for a while. The snowplow incident. At first, the city offered a compromise, and it was a good compromise. They went to the Lutheran school and said, apparently having Jesus Christ painted on a city-owned property, taxpayer-funded property, is unconstitutional in the Establishment Clause. The compromise was really easy. We're going to allow you to paint over it. And I thought that was wonderful. They didn't need to do that. The city didn't need to go to the Lutheran school and do that. They could have just painted over it. The Lutheran school said they couldn't do it. So the city decided that instead of going back to the people who complained, they were just going to make the decision on their own to put a disclaimer on. The right decision would have been to paint over the snowplow. Could have went out and bought a $3 can of Krylon, spray paint, and sprayed over the thing, and you could have been constitutional. I want to remind the council and the citizens of this community, the job of the city attorney is not to involve himself in politics. It's not his job to involve himself in protecting certain politicians in this city. His job is to protect the charter of the state constitution, and the U.S. Constitution. And he did not do that. I have a feeling, and I don't know, but I have a feeling that we're going to be ourselves involved in a lawsuit with a very powerful organization called Freedom from Religion. I also believe the ACLU is going to be involved, and I also believe there's going to be a lot of other organizations involved, and it's going to really shed a bad light on this city because we don't seem to figure out what the Constitution says and what's it mean. Now, let's talk about the majority rules. Well, there was this thing last year where a whole neighborhood was opposed to a Walmart, the majority. Did we compromise with them? No. They asked to have a marketplace Walmart put into their neighborhood, and we ignored them. So let's talk about compromise and about the majority rules and what goes on in this city. I really believe we choose and pick and choose what we're going to decide we're going to, have our fights with. And I feel I'm really embarrassed by the fact that we're choosing to have a constitutional battle in this city over something that is very simple. You cannot promote religion on government-owned property. And let me clarify that, because I've had many friends say to me, why does it say in God we trust on our money? And I've told them, I said, that's perfectly okay. God is a generic term. It applies to all kinds of religions and different things. If they would have painted on that snowplow, God is great, it would have been perfectly constitutionally okay. But they didn't. They painted Jesus Christ, which promotes Christianity. And I want people to know that there's a fine line and there's a difference. And government should not be promoting any kind of religion. And I hope somebody wakes up before this turns into a lawsuit, because it's not going to be good, and we're not going to look good. We're going to look really backwoods and very unconstitutional. And I hope, I pray for all of you that you think about this seriously. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Is there anybody else who wanted to engage the council? Well, thank you. We'll now move on to, I'm sorry?
Look like one gentleman here.
Is there anybody else who want to engage the council?
Hi, my name is Brad Windeshausen. I own our 6808 Heather Ridge Avenue in Sioux Falls here. I work with Premier Systems. We're a storm restoration company in the city. We have multiple offices throughout the Midwest, as far south as Oklahoma City and as far north as Minneapolis. And I was asked to come and speak in front of you guys because there was a idea to do away with permits for re-roof.
Brad, I'm so
Yes.
sorry. I should be more clear. If there's an item later on in the agenda involving a particular topic, we'd like you to save your testimony for then, if that's
Could
okay.
do that, it'd be great.
Thanks, Brad. Thank
Great,
you.
I was just
Thank
hoping
you.
to get out of here.
Thanks so much. Sorry, folks. Is there anybody who wants to engage the council on something that's not on the agenda later on? My apologies, Brad. Anything, folks? Great. Let's move on to that regular agenda then, and Brad, we'll get back to you, I promise. Item number 14.
Item 14 is a new 2015 retail wine license for Cricket Collins and Isaac Anderson, the Bonus Round Bar, to be operated at 803 South Cliff Avenue, CUP not required. Item 15, a transfer of the 2014 retail liquor license, including Sunday sales certificate and video lottery terminals, from Limithorpe Incorporated, Mr. D's Rascals Bar Saloon, 2501 West 10th Street, to BDI Incorporated, business name to be determined, 2501 West 10th Street, CUP not required. Item 16, renewal of 2015 retail liquor license for BDI Incorporated, business name to be determined, 2501 West 10th Street. Item 17, special one-day wine license for Senior Citizen Services, Inc., to be operated at Active Generations, 2300 West 46th Street, for an art class on November 11, 2014. Item 18, special one-day liquor license request for the Avera McKinnon Foundation to be operated at the Avera Prairie Center, 1000 East 23rd Street, for the Big Grape fundraiser on April 10, 2015.
Welcome, Jimmy.
Good evening, Jamie Palmer with licensing. Item 14 is a new license request. They currently hold a retail malt license at this location and want to add wine. 15 and 16 are for the same location. One is the transfer, and the second is the renewal for that license. 17 and 18 are both special one-day requests, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Council?
Move to approve, Karski.
Second roll.
Councilor Karski's been a motion to approve these items, second by Councilor Rolfing. A roll call vote, please.
Council members Anderson?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
That is passed 7-0. Item 19.
Second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the Code of Ordinances of the city by revising Chapter 90, Animals and Fowl, Subchapter, General Provisions.
Chief, welcome.
Good evening. Doug Barthel, Police Chief. This is the second reading for the ordinance that would prohibit the feeding of deer within the city limits. It's a critical piece in our deer management plan, which we will be submitting to the state here very soon, and it will lead us in the direction to help control the ever-increasing deer herd that's in our city limits. So be happy to answer any questions.
Chief, thank you. Folks, this is a second reading, so you actually have an opportunity to engage the council on this topic. Would anybody be interested? Very good. Council, I'll leave it in your hands.
Move to approve, Erpenbach.
Second, Rolfing.
Councilor Erpenbach's made a motion to approve item 19, seconded by Councilor Rolfing. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Council members Anderson?
No.
Erickson?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
That is passed 6-1. Item 20.
Is a second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the Code of Ordinances of the city by amending Chapter 150, Building, Subchapter, Residential Code, by exempting residential reshingles from permit process.
Councilor Dean Karski.
Yes, sir. I'm bringing this forth as a means of removing the requirement to have a building permit for simple maintenance process, basically taking off and putting new shingles on your home.
Very good. This is a second reading as well, folks. Brad, would you be interested in coming forward? Absolutely. Good to have you here. Thank you. Thank you again for your patience. Welcome to City Council.
There's my cue. All right.
Brad, would you mind just introducing yourself again?
Brad Windeshausen.
Thank you.
I work for Premier Systems. We are a Midwestern company. Our offices go down as far as Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and as far north as Minneapolis, Minnesota. We are a storm restoration company. Storm comes in, wind, hail, we'll take care of the roof, siding, gutters, anything that's damaged in the storm. It was brought to my attention that there was a plan to possibly do away with re-roofing permits. And just like to give you some information from a company that does this every day and deals in multiple locations, multiple municipalities. And we have the experience of seeing what's out there and the knowledge of how bad of a decision that is. When we came to town in June after the storm, we started in on re-roofing and doing all the other things that we do. I used to be able to go down in August, 40, 50 permits on a handwritten piece of paper, turn it in, throw 50 cents in the old meter on the parking, and I'd be out the door within an hour. It's something that I think right now we're looking at about 9,000 permits roughly that the city's got for re-roofs. We're tickling 600 and to the tune of about $13,000. From a business standpoint, I'd like to save $13,000, but if you look at it from a standpoint of what's good for the community, it's not doing away with re-roofing permits. Some of the municipalities that we are in, you can see the type of construction work. We get many calls going back to fix, other contractors, shady work. And if you don't have that control over permitting and the contractors that are working in your community, you're going to lose control of the quality. You're going to lose control over licensed contractors doing work. It's my understanding you're still going to want to have licensed, bonded, and insured contractors, correct? Okay. Well, permitting gives that opportunity for that homeowner to be able to see that that contractor has all that in place. If you're leaving it up to a homeowner to be able to make sure that contractor that they're going to have do their work is licensed, insured, and bonded, it's like basically having a speed limit sign saying you got to drive this speed limit and doing away with any police officers handling traffic because you're supposed to do that. So that's just an analogy that you'll see. I would assume if you looked at how many roofs have been re-roofed in this city that haven't been permitted, you'd be amazed. And you require permitting. There's many times that I'll get a call from the city inspector, hey, you've got this roof over here, where's your permit? And, it may have blown away or it's, on the inside of a window. So then, they verify that permit was pulled and we go on our way. Without that, it's going to be really difficult for any enforcement on people to be able to see if there's a licensed contractor doing the work. I'm not quite sure. I did hear some rumors about why this was proposed. Like I said, I used to be able to come down and do 40 or 50 permits on a handwritten sheet, and I'd get out of there within an hour. Okay, after September 22nd, I'd go down there with 15 or maybe even 10, and I'd be getting tickets on my truck, okay, because time ran out in that 2-hour time line for the parking. And not that I don't want to give to the city, but I see it being very unnecessary. I'd even email these lists, and it would still take that long. To my understanding, you guys had implemented a software program, and it's really caused a bottleneck. I've been to many municipalities pulling permits, and I'll tell you this, there's never been a municipality that has more customer service than Sioux Falls. This department is unbelievable. Most municipalities feel that we're doing them a favor, to go in there. These guys make sure that if there's somebody in line, they're calling other people up. I'm even knowing these guys by the first names and who they're rooting for on a Friday night. I mean, that's how personable these people are in that department. And to implement a software program in probably one of the busiest months when all these contractors are trying to get these permits in before weather comes was probably the most idiotical thing that anybody could have thought of. So my suggestion is find out who did that, what department, and have some serious repercussions with that, because that's where the bottleneck is. These guys down there were turning out a large number of permits very quickly, and ever since that software program came into effect, it's really caused havoc. So that's maybe the direction you might want to go versus doing away with not having permits. Since then, I will say it's become a lot faster. They've found different ways to process these permits, and they've been doing a really nice job. But I still think if they could have just waited until maybe December to run this new program when the permits weren't needed so much and so fast, they probably would not even have had any issue, and the council member probably wouldn't have made that motion. So. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Brad.
Is there any
Good job.
questions you have for me?
We'll get back to you, Brad.
Thank you.
Thank you. Folks, this is an opportunity for you to engage the council, and then the council, when you folks are done, then the council has the opportunity to engage you. So anybody else want to talk on this topic that's in the audience? Great job, Brad. Thanks for being here tonight. Sir, you do want to speak? Okay. Folks, if there's anybody else, please get ready, okay? Thank you. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. My name is Cully Liebert with Liebert Construction here in Sioux Falls. I'm here representing the Sioux Empire Home Builders Association. We are opposed to getting rid of permitting for reshingling. The home building industry supports the current practice of getting a building permit, which assures the homeowners that the firm that they're hiring is going to be licensed, bonded, and bonded and insured. Having that inspection in place will really help homeowners know that the inspectors are going to come out and that their work has been done properly. In the event of a code violation, the contractor or permit holder is required to fix the problem in the enforcement with the compliance bond. While we may assume that all contractors will be licensed with the city, some out-of-state contractors will not seek a contractor's license and therefore not have a compliance bond. In fact, the South Dakota Attorney General's distributes a press release every year informing homeowners to be watching out for this. While the property owner may initiate a legal action on their own for shoddy work, it may prove to be more challenging without that compliance bond. By taking away insurance of a building permit, a contractor would likely not request an inspection. So it would raise the question, if an inspection was to be requested by a homeowner, who's going to pay for that? Is it going to be the contractor, the homeowner, or the city? We have a strong history in Sioux Falls and across the state of issuing building permits to protect the public. A survey of South Dakota's 10 largest cities indicates that 8 of them require permits for reshingling. Watertown and Mitch are the only 2 that don't. Sioux Falls and the surrounding communities, Brandon, Harrisburg T, all require a permit for reshingling. We believe a permitting system offers many benefits and protections to consumers that would not exist if we got rid of the permitting system. So on behalf of our industry, on behalf of the Home Builders Association, we would urge you to not pass this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Folks, anybody else? Welcome, sir.
Ray Eberts with Eberts Construction.
Hi, Ray.
We're a local contractor. I got licensed in '74, so I've been dealing in this town for a while. All right, and I'm agreeing with these gentlemen. All right, and I don't mind the storm chasers coming in here because we got hammered by Mother Nature. It would have taken the local contractors 10 years to put our city back. All right, really. But I'm really, you can't do away with those building permits. We gotta have the rules. We gotta have the inspections. All right, you can't open up the door to anybody coming in here. I've been doing a long time going other places where they don't have inspections. We do a lot of remodeling. And we think that everything's done the way we do it here. We'll try to figure it out where someone does it any way they want to do it. Try that sometime, because you're assuming that everything's done properly. All right? And as far as us taking longer to get permits, I don't think it's that much longer. You know, I really don't. But if you do away with the policing, you are opening up a door that you can't close. As far as I know, you're all elected officials.
Yes.
All right, and in my opinion, your first responsibility is to the citizens of this community, all right, to protect them, all right? And if you let guys come in that don't have to be licensed, don't have to be bonded. Now, the only people you can enforce are us local guys, us local contractors that have bonds and license. If we do something wrong, guess what? We're going to take it out of your bond. You have someone come in here that don't have to be licensed or bonded, what recourse do you have? Okay, I talked to a foreman of a shingling crew today, all right? The contractor didn't tell them that they had a roof edge on the roof. I said, how many? 12 steep, big houses. All right, so I'm sure they weighed, do I give up my $10,000 bond, or do I fix those roofs? Now, that didn't come from City Hall. I mean, that was from a roofing contractor, or the foreman of one. All right? If they didn't have to be bonded, guess what? I wanted to talk to them today. They'd have been gone. You can't do away with those building permits. All right? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome, sir.
Josh Scogan Construction, roofing
Josh.
contractor in Sioux Falls.
Sir, take off your hat, please.
Oh.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Thanks, Josh.
I agree with everybody else. We need to keep roofing permits in place. It probably wasn't the perfect time to implement a new computer system down there in the middle of a hailstorm when we're getting a lot of roofing permits. It's a program that I requested for the last 2-3 years about getting permits online. It sounds like that could be implemented within the next 2 months. I think we're voting on this too early, depending on where it's at. I think we should see if we get that in place. I think that's going to save a lot of time of people waiting for permits and being downtown. If I can just get on my phone when I'm on a job site and get a permit, it's going to be a lot easier and save the trouble of everybody driving downtown to get those. It sounds like that system should be in place in a couple months, and I think we won't have an issue about timeframes of getting things accomplished.
Josh, thank you. Appreciate it. Well, folks, very good. Thank you for the testimony. Council, now in your hands. Councilor Erickson.
Thank you for all the testimony. I appreciate the feedback from the business people in our community. One thing that I wanted just to bring to the attention of the council, we often talk about how city, state, county needs to work together. And taking away the building permits would hinder that relationship with the state. Currently, this information of building permits is shared with the Department of Revenue. As a former revenue agent myself, I would receive these. I would be able to research to see if these people are licensed contractors, which protects the homeowner in the end, as well as bringing in the revenue for our state, which is then passed to our city to make sure that sales and use tax is paid on these materials. Sounds tedious, but at the same time, when we get a big storm and the storm chasers come in, not all the time do we have people coming in that are honest. They may come in and just bang out hundreds of jobs without really your best regard. This is a way that we're able to catch them, that we're able to prosecute them, and that we can keep this statistical information to use in criminal investigations if somebody is wronged. So if we do away with these building permits, I fear that that information being shared with the Department of Revenue is going to be hindered. I know the Department of Revenue appreciates receiving that information. It's in the end, that really does protect the homeowner. It doesn't sound like it's a big issue for the contractors to be getting these building permits. I think in time, once the software is up to speed and everybody is able to process that quickly, I think that we're going to see the building permit process speed up heavily. So I would encourage my colleagues here to vote to keep the building permit process on roofing at this time.
Councilor Buck.
I wanted to kind of bail out staff real quick. This new software wasn't something that we dreamed up after the hailstorm, so I just wanted to remind folks that staff has been working on bringing this new software online for literally years. And it is something that takes time. It is a really complicated process, but the gentleman is right that you'll be able to get a permit online and it will be much easier, much simpler. It was implemented with the idea of citizens being protected. And so I think it's very important to understand that. The other thing that I would say regarding this is I agree with Councilor Erickson, but I also would say as a homeowner, I know that if I have my plumbing fixed, there's an inspection and a tag and a permit that goes with all of those sorts of projects. I can't judge my plumbing alone any better than I could judge my roof. And so I would ask council as well to vote this down, that we should continue to have building permits for roofing and for all the things that we do for our homes. Thank you.
Councilor?
Question for Ron Bell, if I may. Ron, in your office this year, how many contractors came in for a building permit that didn't have a license?
Very few. Homeowners come in and obtain building permits, but we're unable to issue a permit to an unlicensed contractor.
Okay, so have you caught anybody this year using this process?
Well, not this process, but I can show you just a quotation that our inspector got. He was doing a roofing inspection in the central part of the city, and he was asked to come over and take a look at a roof on a house. And the owner, who was a 90-year-old man, paid a contractor, it looks about $9,600. And the contractor did do the roof, but he did not do the gutters. He didn't do the awnings. That meant that 90-year-old man is taken by that contractor that is an unlicensed contractor. We run into this on occasion. So it does happen. There are unlicensed contractors that are out there. Whenever we find them, we deal with our citation process, but we're always trying to make sure that the homeowner is going to be taken care of as far as any unlicensed work and any shoddy work that is done. It was kind of ironic because he called in to see if he had a license for this contractor, and coincidentally, one of our staff had a call from a daughter of an 84-year-old woman that this contractor was building a carport without a permit on the property line, which meant that whatever work that they started with has to be removed because it doesn't meet code and it didn't have a permit. So this is very important. As far as the licensed contractors, that's in the bonding, that'll always be there. But if you take away the capability of us to be able to police that, you're going to allow unlicensed contractors to do work in this town. And we've seen it in the past, and we've seen that there has been repercussions that the actual homeowners are the ones that are suffering.
Has the city issued any citations in the last year for people doing business without a contractor's license?
Yes, multiple times.
We have cited people.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilor, did you want to make a motion to approve this item?
I will, but I'm going to make a little statement first, if I may.
Can
You can do it after.
Can I, yes, would you want to make the motion?
I'll make a motion to approve this.
Second.
There's been a motion, and it has been seconded by Councilor Jamison. Thank you, Councilor. Councilor, go right ahead.
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank all the contractors that are here because you are legitimate and you do business the right way and the way we expect you to do business in Sioux Falls, and we thank you for that. It's the unreputable ones that we're not catching that, that are causing the problems. And I'm going to echo the sentiments of most people here that our building services people do an outstanding job. They truly do. We got great people working over there, and I thank them for the work that they do. That being said, just today I was visiting with a mutual, or with a friend of mine who told me about how his neighbor hired a contractor to replace his shingles on his house. And he got a pretty good deal. First rainstorm, the roof leaked. He called the city up to come out and inspect it, and the contractor didn't have a license, wasn't bonded, and he was from outside of the community. When the inspector asked the homeowner didn't you ask him if he had a license? He said, yeah, he told me he was licensed, bonded, and he had gotten the building permit. He went on his word. How do you double check that? A few weeks ago at our informational meeting, we were able to hear how the building permit process works when a single-family residence needs to have shingles replaced. We're shown several pages of building codes that state what is the minimum acceptable product requirements and how they are to be installed. We were also informed that no inspection other than a seemingly random drive-by inspection is completed, and that inspection is not documented to the property owner as complete by the inspector, kind of like your plumbing, Councilor Urbanbach. The times that a thorough inspection have been done is when the roof leaked, possibly several years after the work was done. Tonight I brought before us a change to our way of doing business in that it removes the requirement for a building permit to perform maintenance, and that's what this is in most communities is considered maintenance to a single-family residence, namely replace the shingles on your home. Most other cities, and I called West Des Moines, Lincoln, Fargo, Watertown, and Rochester, I called 6 places, 5, and that was just totally at random, did not require a building permit for such maintenance. And while that in itself is not enough reason for changing our ordinance, remember that removing the permit requirement does not remove the license and bond requirement for the contractor, nor does it change the building codes regarding shingle replacement. The current process provides for a false sense of security to the homeowner regarding the quality of the work that will be done, as the city does not warrant the work that's being completed, nor do we guarantee the quality of work. The justification for keeping the building permit requirement for shingle placement is not that it ensures our building codes are being met, but it allows for our building services to police the contractors for license and bond compliance. The cost to the citizens of Sioux Falls of that policing in a normal year is about $40,000. This year, if we have 9,000 building permits, it's $180,000. It seems like a pretty high price to pay. I would suggest that non-compliance with the license and bond requirement carry a heavier penalty than the cost of the license itself. Leaving the ordinance as it is does very little to protect the homeowner, and removing the requirement for a permit is a small step in reducing government regulations. I'm asking for your vote, yes.
Councilor Jamison.
Just a quick note, I want to compliment Dean Karski for thinking about this issue and digging in. Less regulation, I think everybody appreciates it, but when we have the Home Builders Association or the contractors come forward and say they actually want it, I think it builds confidence in the process. don't stop thinking about change. But I think when the contractors come and say it's a good process and it's working, it's the right answer that we're looking for. As well, I might just share a short note. My wife is a realtor. When she has buyers come and look at homes and there's, say, a new roof or a new addition that's put on, she'll go and check with the city to see if building permits were pulled for those projects and if they've been completed and fully inspected. It adds confidence into the buyer's prospect of buying a home that's had work done to it. So it builds confidence in everything. I think it's, for right now, I think it's still working okay, but don't stop thinking.
Councilor Kiley.
I guess I would have to agree that I have concerns over this particular issue as well, and I would agree with the gentleman that had addressed the council previously. I ask myself, if we eliminated the building permits, are we any better off? And I don't see that we've gained anything by eliminating a building permit. And I think we would go backwards. If there is anything that we need to do to improve upon the issuing of the permit, or even the steps following up following the issuance of the permit, then those are things that we can do, that we can work on. But I would urge council members to retain the present policy.
Councilor Rittenbach.
I just wanted to add to that, and I talked with Councilor Karski about this as well. I agree this is a great topic for us to be discussing, but I do have personal stories, as I shared the last time we talked about this, and I think my plumbing analogy is right on in terms of if my plumbing is inspected, there's a tag there that includes what they checked for, and it's signed by the person that checked it. I think we need to move in that direction. I need to know who inspected that roof, and I need to be able to go back to that person and say, hey, you know, that process needs to work the same way for roofs as it does for any other part of my home. And so I would encourage council, and I'll be asking leadership to move this to a committee so that we do add to that ordinance.
Agreed. A roll call vote, please.
Council members Anderson?
No.
Erickson?
No.
Erpenbach?
No.
Jameson?
No.
Karski?
Yes.
Kiley?
No.
Rolfing?
No.
That has failed 1-6. Item 21.
21 is a second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the Code of Ordinances of the city by amending Chapter 150, Building Subchapter Residential Building Contractors by raising bond requirements for residential building contractors.
Councilor Dean Karski.
Yes, sir. This one's closely related to number 20, and I contemplated bringing together as one ordinance, and I decided that I want at least one win, so I was going to do this one separately. This basically increases the bonding requirement from $10,000, which is a 20-plus year requirement, and takes it to $20,000.
Folks, is there anybody who wanted to speak to the council on this item? Council?
Move to approval, Anderson.
Second, Rolfing.
Councilor Anderson Jr. has made a motion to approve this item, seconded by Councilor Rolfing. Any discussion? Councilor Dean Karski?
Please vote yes.
Do you want to make?
Oh, yes, we need to amend. Thank you very much.
You may get your win.
I may get my way. I have an amendment to this motion, and the amendment basically changes the implementation date to make it easier for all those parties involved to make this actually work. And I'm going to ask the Assistant City Clerk to read this into the record, please.
This would be a motion to amend by adding, except as stated in 150.129E, after the second word contractor in section 150.129A, and after $20,000 in section 150.129C, and adding a new section 150.129E, quote, contractor licenses issued before December 15, 2014 shall maintain a continuous bond in the penal sum of at least $10,000 in a form approved by the city with the contractor as principal on the bond and the city as obligee for its benefit and that of consumers dealing with the contractor. The aggregate liability of the surety for contractor licenses issued before December 15, 2014 regardless of the number of claims made against the bond or the number of years the bond remains in force, shall not exceed the bond's penal sum. All contractors must maintain a $20,000 bond as of June 1st, 2015, unquote.
Is there a second?
Second, Erickson.
Thank you, Councilor Erickson. There has been a motion to amend this item by Councilor Karski, seconded by Councilor Erickson. Any discussion? A roll call vote, please.
Council members Anderson?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
That amendment is passed 7-0. We now have an amended main motion. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Council members Anderson?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
That item is passed 7-0. Item 22.
22 is a second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property at 1701 East 54th Street North from the I-2 Heavy Industrial District to the CN Conservation District, petition number 2014-0901, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval.
Good evening, Diane DeCoyer with Planning Office. This is a rezone from the I-2 Heavy Industrial District to the CN Conservation District for allowed forms. The applicant is Chuck Service with City Engineering. The location is the southwest corner of North Jessica Avenue and East 54th Street North. The size of the parcel is 1.75 acres. The purpose is to construct a regional detention pond. There is both light and heavy industrial zoning around this location. This detention pond is actually Phase 2. Phase 1 is located up around Cliff Avenue and north of East 54th Street. So again, this is Phase 2. But I can answer any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Diane. A second reading, folks. Anybody want to speak to this item? Council?
Move for approval, Anderson.
Second, Rolfing.
Councilor Anderson Jr. has made a motion to approve this item, seconded by Councilor Rolfing. Councilor Jameson.
A question for Diane, if I could. How large of an area will this detention pond serve?
That's a good question. I'm not sure I know the answer to that, but I can get that for you.
A roll call vote, please.
Council members Anderson?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
That is passed 7-0. Item 23.
A second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property at 4801 East Linden Lane from the RD1 Twin Home Duplex Residential Suburban District to the C2 Commercial Neighborhood and Streetcar District, petition number 2014-0904, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval.
Diane?
Diane DeCoyer again. The applicant and owner on this is William Petrie. The subject property is located at 4801 East Linden Lane, which is a frontage road to East Arrowhead Parkway. The size of the parcel is 0.71 acres. Purpose is to allow commercial development. 3 lots to the south and southeast are vacant and adjacent to C4 to the west. Buffer yards are required due to their adjacency to the residential homes around it. The property had previously been zoned as C2 under our old ordinance. Since Shape Places took effect, it was then zoned back to RD1 because there are homes on the property. So the applicant has come forward to rezone again to C2. Can answer any questions.
Thank you, Diane. Folks, anybody want to engage the council on this? Welcome.
Ron Nelson, Nelson Property Consultants, representing the owner. We were marketing this property prior to Shape Places as a commercial piece. Kind of took us by surprise that it got rezoned back, and so we're just essentially here to put it back to the way it had been some almost 20 years previously. It's on an arterial street. There's commercial all around, so it's just our feeling that that was the logical zoning district for that. So open to any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you. Sir, welcome.
Well, my name is Ignacio Hernandez.
Ignacio?
Ignacio Hernandez.
Thank you, Ignacio.
Yeah.
Welcome.
And, well, my concern is that that zone. I have a house on that property, or not next to the property, but near it. And, it's like, my concern is, on that particular lot, why are they just trying to zone that lot commercial? And I did talk to Ron the other day. I called him up to see because I was concerned about it being changed to a commercial lot. And he was telling me that, it's the nature of the beast. So I go, I don't agree with it because I have a residence right near it. And if they change that to commercial, they already had that casino where they had the robbery a few years back. I don't know if you remember. But my concern is, the traffic that's going to generate them directly, getting closer to my property on the Gordon Drive. So I'm about 3-4 houses from the Linden Street. So my concern is, why are they trying to rezone that for commercial property when, it really doesn't kind of look like an odd shape, to just zone that corner. And then the rest of the house is going to be kind of odd looking lot. And my only concern is it for necessary purposes or kind of more, I see it more as a greed kind of deal there, because it's just that one corner and it's going to affect my property. There's going to be more traffic. And what his answer was to me is that his idea is to get the whole strip right there across the 10th Street, Arrowway, Linden, changed over to commercial property eventually. I don't agree with that change, but my concern is how it's going to affect my family down the road, living there near that commercial zoning there, if they do change it. So I don't agree for that being changed over to commercial zoning. And I know I did speak to some of the neighbors there. I didn't speak to them all because I just found out about it. I guess I wasn't paying attention to the zoning change there, so I didn't pay much attention to it till recently when I discovered it. And I did talk to a couple of my neighbors there. They weren't too happy about it, but they weren't able to be here today. But I didn't talk to all of them, but I'm pretty sure that before I had talked to them before, and they didn't agree with the city putting lights there on our street. So I'm sure they're not going to like commercial properties aligned by their residents right now. So I'm opposing that change, and I hope you guys see it. My way of seeing things for my family there. I want to preserve a resident there for them in the future.
Thank you, Ignacio. Thank you. Folks, anybody else want to engage the council on this topic? Councilors? No. If the council has questions, they'll bring you up, Ron. And Councilor Buck?
Yes, actually, Ron, I do have questions for you. Can you talk about why that lot, you said it was zoned commercial C2 before.
Yes.
Why does it have houses on it now? And then can you describe for us the gentleman's concerns? What kinds of things do the city require of you when we change that zoning? If something's built there that's commercial, what kinds of things will happen to make that kind of fit into the neighborhood a little better? So first, why are there homes on it, even though it was zoned commercial? Do that first, and then I'll ask the other one.
Best way to answer that, Councilwoman Erpenbach, is along 41st Street, along Minnesota Avenue. The city kind of expands and just grows out there. I don't know the age of this home, but I've been working with the property owner for probably about 7 years. And the parents of the owners currently have both passed away, and so it was at that point that they elected to put the property up for sale. But when they originally moved there and lived there, it was a farm, probably miles outside of the city of Sioux Falls. There wasn't a Walmart on the other side of their property, or a Menards, or a Dolly Farm Village. And so I guess the best way to answer that is just, kind of the natural evolution of how a city grows. And today there's, I think the 2013 traffic count along that street is 17,900 cars. It wasn't that way, back in the day. It was a sleepy country area. So I guess the best, again, way to answer that would probably be just a natural evolution of, how a city grows. And, And the parents, while they didn't necessarily want to live, on the busy street, they were just at an age that they didn't want to move. We actually even explored nursing home options for them, but they just chose to live there till the end of their life. I did want to address the previous.
Counselor, ask your question.
My second question for you then is, Diane, can you circle the gentleman's house? Do you know which one it is? Can you point it out?
I don't think that's right. Is that correct?
Is it? It's across the street, the fourth one down?
Outside of the circle. I think
it's not in the circle.
Ignacio, could you come forward, please?
Could you come up and
please
help
just
her
sit there.
circle that for us and for the public as well? And then Ron, can you talk about what are your plans for that area? What do you think would come of that lot that we're talking about specifically today? And then what he alluded to in terms of that strip along there. What do you envision? I mean, you're a visionary guy. What do you think would go there?
Ignacio,
right?
would you just sit there? Thank you. Ron? Thank you.
So the house that's circled in red currently is your house, correct? Yes, okay, thank you. Okay, Ron.
I don't have a clear answer for that. I'm a commercial real estate broker marketing a commercial piece of property for sale, and I don't want to sugarcoat it to anybody. We talked to every one of the neighbors in the area, kind of within the 250 feet. Normally we would hold a neighborhood meeting. We just didn't see the need because there was unanimous approval. We went into door to door into the living rooms of some folks. Some folks we just talked to on the steps, explained everything, asked for any questions. At the Planning Commission meeting, 2 or 3 of the neighbors actually showed up because they were in support of it. I don't know if they're here tonight. But, I've said kind of the normal things you see in a commercial district. It could be a McDonald's. It could be a bank. It's a C2 zone that we're requesting. And, with that comes all sorts of possibilities that it could be. I'm not party to know exactly what the current group that is purchasing it has in mind for it. I think at this point they're just looking to make an investment in some commercial property.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilor Everson.
Question for you, Ron. I know that it changed back due to Shape Places. How long had it been zoned commercial prior to Shape Places taking effect with the commercial?
Best I can answer that is, as I indicated, I want to say 06, 07 we started working together. And do you know, these are the actual owners here, the Petries, but at least that far back it was, but I've kind of loosely thrown out 20 years, but perhaps that long, but I honestly don't know, but at least 5 or 6 years prior to Shape Places.
Council, would anybody want to make a motion on this item?
I'll move to approve it.
Second, Jameson.
There's been a motion to approve this item by Councilor Rolfing, second by Councilor Jameson. Any further discussion, Councilor Anderson Jr.?
Mike Cooper, please.
Ms. Cooper. Ron, you can sit down. Thank you.
Mike, if this does get approved, what type of barriers, protection for the neighborhood is going to be required of this property?
Mike Cooper, Planning and Building Services. With our ordinance, this property would require a buffer yard on the east and south sides. The buffer yard would be a 30-foot setback with a 4-foot high berm, as well as a landscaping.
Does the same property owner own the property to the south, the vacant lot, or is?
I don't believe they do.
Okay.
No.
Thank you.
A roll call vote, please.
Council members Anderson,
Yes.
Erickson,
Yes.
Erpenbach,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Karski,
Yes.
Kiley,
Yes.
Rolfing.
Yes.
That is passed 7-0. Item 24.
Second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property at 500 South Hillview Road from the RD1 Twin Home Duplex Residential Suburban District to the C2 Commercial Neighborhood and Streetcar District, petition number 2014-0905, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval.
Diane DeCoyer, Planning Office. This is actually just to the east of the property we just spoke about. The applicant is Bryant Soberg. The owner is Common Land 2. Subject property is located at 500 South Hillview Road. It's south of East Arrowhead Parkway and west of South Foss Avenue. The size of the parcel is 0.24 acres. The existing home on this lot will be demolished in order to combine the two other lots to the east in preparation for retail and commercial development. We did have some phone calls on this from neighbors. Their concern was how they were being protected if this is going to be developed into retail commercial. There are buffer yard requirements to be able to protect them. It's, in this case, it's a 30-foot buffer yard with a 4-foot high berm and 40 units of landscaping. When we spoke to some of the neighbors in this case, they did feel that it alleviated their concern, any potential incompatibilities that they felt there might be with these transitions. The property, again, had been previously zoned as C2 under the previous ordinance, and again, under Shape Places, because there's still a home on the property, it was zoned back to RD1 because of the existing structure. I can answer any questions you might have.
Thanks, Diane. Anybody in the audience want to address this item? Council?
Move to approve, Karski.
Second, Rolfing.
Councilor Kautsky's made a motion to approve this item, seconded by Councilor Rolfing. Councilor Anderson, Jr.
Mike Cooper again, please.
Ms. Cooper?
Since this is the second one, Mike, I'm becoming really concerned about the direction that we're going on Arrowhead Parkway. I can understand what we're doing there and why it has the commercial value, but because we're making such a big change from a residential to a commercial, is there no conditional use here that where the neighborhood can join in and actually discuss their issues and that, or has that been done during the planning meetings?
There would not be conditional use requirements unless it was something that was like an adult use or anything that would be objectionable. That's one of the reasons that we put the buffer yard requirements in with the new ordinance. And in this item, and as well as the previous item, the reason that we rezone them residential with Shape Places is because they were at the time classified as a non-conforming residential use. But in both cases, the commercial zoning goes back a number of years. So that was just a policy decision that we made, but the owners have asked us to reverse that, but it does take council approval. But we do see that with the buffer yard requirements, that's typically what the conditional use would try to address anyway, which is why we put that in the ordinance.
And during these meetings, how many of the residents did we hear from on this?
I think two. One attend the planning commission.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
A roll call vote, please.
Council members Anderson?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
That has passed 7-0. Item 25.
Second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property at 701 North Ebenezer Avenue and West 5th Street from the RD1 Twin Home Duplex Residential, Suburban RS Single Family Residential, Suburban, and O Office Districts to the I1 Light Industrial and O Office Districts, petition number 2014-0907, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval.
Diane DeCoyer, Planning Office. The applicant on this is Doug Brockhouse with Bender Commercial. The owner is Legacy LLP Real Estate. The location, North Ebenezer Avenue to the east, Marion Road to the west, and 5th Street to the south. The size of the parcel is 45.82 acres. The petitioner has proposed approximately 35 acres of I-1 light industrial to the east and 10 acres of office to the west. With single family located to the south, a level C buffer yard is required. Again, that's a 30-foot buffer with a 4-foot high berm and 40 units of landscaping. And we did not have any comments during Planning Commission on this. I can answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Diane. Did anybody want to speak to this item? Council?
Move for approval, Anderson.
Second, Rolfing.
Councilor Anderson Jr. has made a motion to approve this item, seconded by Councilor Rolfing. A roll call vote, please.
Council members Anderson?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Urbanbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
That has passed 7-0. Thank you. Item 26.
A first reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the Code of Ordinances of the city by revising temporary employee provisions of Chapter 39, Personnel Regulations and Benefits, Retirement and Pensions.
Welcome,
Mayor,
Bill.
Mayor, Council, Bill O'Toole, Director of Human Resources. I'm going to be brief since this is a first reading, and we'll get into a little more detail on November 12th when we have our hearing. Basically, what we are doing is we are redefining our temporary employee definitions effective January 1, 2015 to coincide with compliance requirements of the Affordable Care Act. So we're having to write new definitions for our temporary employees, like I said, to comply with the requirements of the Affordable Care Act. It's obviously very important that we understand where those lines are and abide by those. There are significant financial ramifications if you do not. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Bill. Council, would anybody want to set a date of hearing and second reading for Wednesday, November 12th for this item?
So moved, Karski.
Second.
Erickson.
Thank you. Councilor Karski's made that motion, and it was seconded by Councilor Anderson Jr. A roll call vote, please.
Council members Anderson?
Yes.
Erickson? Urbanbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Thank you. That has passed 7-0. Item 27.
First reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, approving Amendment Number 8 to wastewater agreement number 940466 between the City of Sioux Falls and the City of Brandon, and amending the regional wastewater rates charged to the City of Brandon.
Mark?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Mark Cotter with the Office of Public Works. Just to start off with, I did hand out a packet on the front side. You should have a couple of key pieces here, and since this is a first reading, if there are questions, there's a key takeaway. The first is the presentation. The next is the 2-page amendment that has the graphic of where the proposed lagoons are to be sited. The next is really a front and back 2-page cardstock that both the city of Sioux Falls and Brandon have agreed to based on the two final options and those financial considerations. All right, let's get started. I do have a fair amount of information to get through, and so I'll do my best to take you through this time frame that we've been working with the City of Brandon. I'd also like to welcome Mayor Beasley is here, and City Administrator Brian Reed is here. This amendment will essentially extend the wastewater contract that we've had with Brandon since 1994. It'll extend it an additional 3 years to November of 2017. There is a mutually agreed 30-day termination clause that's incorporated in it. I will tell you on the front side, I do disagree with the results of the Brandon wastewater study, and I believe it puts the City of Brandon in a high degree of risk, and it also puts the region in a high degree of risk. And I'd like to take you through those points tonight. All right, Brandon has been a long-term customer. They've been a customer on wastewater for 20 years. The Brandon agreement is set to expire on November 21, 2014. They have done a study, and they do intend to build new open cell sewage lagoons on a primary site just south of town that right now is very culturally important, environmentally sensitive for a number of reasons. Sioux Falls has attempted to work with the City of Brandon for the last 14 months. We've identified a number of risks and concerns. They've been very receptive to listening to those over the course of the last 14 months. Sioux Falls, with all the work that we've done with regional wastewater and looking far into the future, that is our recommended solution to Brandon. At this point in time, they are going a different direction. This amendment will provide them a bridge to design their own new open cell wastewater lagoons and site them on the south side of their city. All right, just to orientate you, as you come into come into Brandon, their current lagoons are on the northwest part of the city. The red box that's around that graphic is a 40-acre parcel. That's key because that's also the same size of parcel that they would be developing on the south side of town with more open cell lagoons. When these lagoons were originally designed, it was designed for a population of just about 2,600 people and just under 170,000 gallons of wastewater per day. Their current population is just under 10,000 people. Their 20-year projection of growth is to grow to about 17,000 people. Their current flow that they receive and manage is just under 700,000 gallons of wastewater per day. And Brandon currently sends the city of Sioux Falls 475,000 gallons of wastewater per day. Okay, to orientate you, and this is really one of our primary reasons why we want to orientate you with the growth limit lines of Brandon and also the growth limit lines of the city of Sioux Falls. The yellow dashed line is their ultimate growth boundaries. And then the red line has been our agreed growth boundaries. We essentially marry up with Brandon at the 6 Mile Road, and then we generally follow the river as it moves south. This proposed siting of these lagoons are within about a half mile of our future growth area, which brings a significant concern for the falls, but there's a number of other issues to also share. The current city lagoons are shown in yellow more in the north part of the city of Brandon. There's a green line that connects that yellow dot, which is their current lagoons. That green line is a force main that pipes wastewater every day to the city of Sioux Falls, and that large green area more to the left is our current wastewater treatment facility. We've shared the prevailing winds spring and fall. There's been a number of odor issues in Brandon for the last 2 years. They've been attempting to get ahead of those, but it has been a key topic of discussion, one that the mayor did bring up when we met in a recent meeting, that one of the key complaints that they do hear about their current lagoons. All right, the key amendment points. It does allow Brandon the time to complete an archaeology study. When we quickly wrote this amendment, Amendment 8, one of the key tasks that they needed to complete was an archaeology study. That essentially looks for the presence of human remains that may be present from early settlements. What we were shared is that if the site is cleared, that'll be the last due diligence before they go into final design and ultimately site these lagoons. The current amendment will continue the majority of the existing terms of the agreement, but it does begin to put multipliers on their rates. One of the key factors with regional wastewater is you pay the base rate. If you qualify for certain credits, you take them, but then every meter that you add, you pay in a system development charge, essentially a hookup fee per house. Absent a long-term regional contract, the only way we can start to account for capacity is to put a multiplier on their rate. And again, this will provide the bridge agreement, time for them to design and construct these new open cell sewage lagoons. All right, this is the target. This is what we've been shared as the primary location that Brandon is looking to site these new lagoons. There was a discussion at their council last night. They did approve this amendment, but they did redline out the archaeology work. They also redlined out the use of this exhibit. This exhibit, I think, is twofold. Anytime we identify and site a facility, infrastructure, it's good to have a very open and transparent process. One of the reasons we wanted it to be open and transparent for you is that area in green in the lower left is the city of Sioux Falls future growth area. Just to give you a sense that if these lagoons were even sited in the northeast part of this parcel, it would be less than a half mile from our future area. It's near residential. There's floodplain concerns. We shared today that the majority of this parcel is in what we call a water source protection area. That essentially protects groundwater and becomes very prohibitive to site lagoons of this type because they do have the ability to fail, and then it could impact groundwater. And again, very culturally sensitive on the reason that they have to do an archaeology study. This exhibit to us is very important that it's a part of the amendment. Last night their council did ask to strike it. Just a couple other reference points. Just immediately north is Houston Speedway, and then immediately north and west is two schools in the Brandon School District. All right, here's a couple of the more environmentally sensitive areas. The orange area, which is the majority of the area that's on the left map, is what we call the water protection area. That's an overlay area that really protects that area because we know we have groundwater sources that need to be protected, and any lagoon facilities that would be sited in that type of an area would have likely very stringent construction requirements. The other side on the right shows the floodplain. The yellow is the 100-year floodplain, and the pink is the 500-year floodplain. There's also a major overhead transmission line that goes through that subject parcel. So we've done our due diligence to try to identify not only is this culturally sensitive, but it's very environmentally sensitive. And all of us that work in the wastewater world work every day to not have upset conditions, but we know they do happen. Just this last June, when we received 15 inches of rain, that starts to inundate our infrastructure, and in many cases, it's not designed for that. When you have an open cell lagoon system, that's an extensive amount of water to actually take on that could potentially upset that system and have a release to the environment. All right, I've got about 6 slides. I'm going to try to go through these quickly on timeline, but we have been working intently, having productive discussions with the City of Brandon. But just to frame this, in July of 2013 is when we brought forth to you the guidance, the rates, and the structure for the regional system. Sioux Falls in August sent Brandon the regional wastewater contract for them to review and consider. In October, our team met with Brandon, and in late October of last year, we were responding to their questions. Significant activities happened in November of 13 and in December of 13 that there was a conversation that we had with Brandon staff that we should be able to put together a contract as early as mid-December. Then in later November, we understood that Brandon had wrote a master plan, reconsidered their options, and actually the study dated back in September of 2013 had already identified that they had a preferred option to build open cell lagoon systems. In December of 2013, the City Council of Brandon increased rates pursuant to that study to not only make treatment but also collection improvements. And then in March, Brandon initiated steps to secure state funding to make these wastewater improvements. In March of 2014, just a mere 6-7 months ago, Brandon had called, and for years, since Brandon has been sending their wastewater to Sioux Falls, they've been very consistent. At night, they send us about 300,000 gallons of wastewater per day. We got a call from Brandon in March of this year asking if they could pump more wastewater to us. We asked what the condition was, and the comment was, well, wastewater is about ready to go over the road. And we asked, what road? And at the time they said it's the road that actually circles the lagoon. And so they let their lagoons get so high, and that picture shows that they close to having a release to the environment. We quickly wrote an amendment we called it Amendment 6. They tripled their flows almost up to 1 million gallons a day. That went on for nearly a month. We started to dig in, starting to understand if they could actually get ahead at that time of their wastewater. They knew that they needed to sit down and probably do this for more than a month, and so then this went on for almost another 60 days. And then since things have leveled off and they've actually gotten ahead of that, they've gone from an average flow of 300,000 gallons a day to almost 500,000 gallons a day. The key thing here is, as all of us manage wastewater facilities, that wastewater should have never gotten within 3 feet of that road. All right. As we continued through and they started to get caught up on their wastewater pumping, I've asked a number of times over the course of April through July to address their council and have not been granted. Sorry. Questioning a number of the factors in this study and really struggling with some of the outcomes, we did hire a very significant firm to study this study and recommend to us if there are any shortcomings in the study. HDR is a very strong engineer, very world recognized in wastewater. Thank you. And identified a number of issues in this study. We had very productive meetings in July. We met with the City of Brandon and their engineer 5 times, identified the size of the lagoon was missized to the tune of, as we looked at their population projections, really tried to back into how they sized their new sewage lagoons. They were sized for 1.1 million gallons per day. After we sat down with them, we said at a very minimum they should be sized for 1.5 million gallons per day. But with some level of conservation, they should go up to 2 million. As they checked on the analysis, they agreed and have since changed the size of their lagoon to correct it to almost 100% larger. Future treatment requirements did not include in their original study from a cost factor. It was listed. They have added costs now to make sure that as the DNR raises the treatment requirements, that they have costs in the study to address that. The force main sizing, one of the key things that we said is, have you looked at the ability to take all your wastewater to Sioux Falls, and is the current pipe that connects Brandon to Sioux Falls, is it large enough? After they did some additional study and wanted some redundancy, they added that into their study to make sure that they had that planned for, and that now is in about year 7 of the 20-year study. And then last, one of the things that you've always asked for is, what's the impact to our customers? And so we asked them to redo their financial calculations to show the actual impact to the customer. On July, again, we met with Brandon staff and the mayor. We'd worked out all these changes, re-evaluated the costs, and at that time determined that whether they build their own lagoons or if they pump everything to Sioux Falls, there was an equivalent cost. So there's no financial advantage for them to take on the risk and build their own lagoons at that point in time. So we thought at that point in time, I think we're there. I think we've got an agreement. We'll move forward. In August, we invited Mayor Beasley and Brian Reed in to see our mayor. Had a good meeting, talked about some of the key issues, which is local control is a big issue. Also talked about rates, and so we've taken steps to address both of those. Sioux Falls and Brandon staff meet again in September. All right. In October, we did send the City of Brandon a reminder letter that very soon their contract will be at their termination date. They came back within 2 weeks, as we asked, and said, can we get a temporary agreement? We have made the decision to build our own lagoons, but first, before we can finalize our due diligence, we need to complete an archaeology study. That contract amendment that's in front of you went to Brandon last night. The edits that they've made is to remove the exhibit that's in back, which I think is very important, and it was the specific language on the archaeology study. My recommendation to you is that we take the opportunity to sit down with Brandon this week, see if we can agree to language, because we did not agree to that strike over language that's in front of you tonight. We've got 2 readings. And then in November 21 of 2014, their contract will expire. All right, that's the time frame. Let's just reframe. Sioux Falls did a peer review of their study. We identified a number of assumptions that needed to be changed as a result of the peer review. Sizing of the system, timing of the force main, the need to recognize that the DNR does expect to raise our treatment requirements, make this water cleaner in about 8 to 12 years, and then also change the carrying costs to make sure it's reflective of what it costs a typical customer. At this point, there's only two options that remain for consideration: pump everything to Sioux Falls or build open cell sewage lagoons on the south side of Brandon. We do both agree with the financial components that are in front of you, and that's where we currently sit. This is a picture of a similar system that's been selected. It's just a much smaller system. And so this is for 0.2 million gallons per day. The city of Brandon would be building one about 10 times this size. And this is also on about 4 acres of land, and the city of Brandon would be initially citing 40. Today we heard that they'd be looking for 40 to 100 acres of land to purchase. The two options again: pump everything to Sioux Falls or build new open lagoon system. Again, I said when we started, when there's no financial advantage to Brandon's customers, don't absorb this type of risk. The breakdown first is when the Brandon study recommended $2 million open cell lagoons. Year one, since they have to take on a significant amount of debt to build this facility, that's why their customer cost year one per month, treatment only, is higher than the bottom, which is just to essentially discharge 100% of their wastewater to Sioux Falls. Today, if they were to select that option, their customers could pay $11 less per month. The one thing that we did share is as they pay down their debt, their cost to customers should go down. But then we had recommended that plan on us having at least a 3% increase in our rates just to be responsible on inflation. And so it does come that it's nearly a wash. There's $400 difference that if you're a customer in Brandon, if you're on the lagoon system over a 20-year period for treatment only, it'll cost you $10,000, $400. If you're pumping 100% of the wastewater to Sioux Falls, minimal to no odor, no open cell lagoons, it's essentially the same cost. It's a wash, and it's far less risk. Risk to Brandon, as we see it, they are in the treatment of wastewater forever. They no longer would have a backstop for excess flow because today we're connected at the north end of their city. They'd be looking at moving this entire facility to the south. So no longer could they make a phone call and say, could we triple our flow to you until we get out of this jam. Site acquisition, construction, permitting, and operation in this environmentally sensitive area is going to be a challenge. Quality of life, odors, community standards. I think one of the most important things that we have to do is when you look out a generation, you set a vision of what your community could and should look like, you check off things like solid infrastructure, good parks, good roads. Very few people would ever check off open cell sewer lagoons. We're very concerned about the aquifer impacts with the watershed protection area. There are, with any of our systems, whether it's on the Sioux Falls system or in a lagoon system, there's always a risk of discharges. When you leverage for this particular solution up to $15 million, does that limit capital spending on other city priorities? And then today, this would be built for 20 years of growth. And then risk to the region, this is really for us to consider and steps to take is it is adjacent to Sioux Falls residential growth area. It has the ability to have an impact on aquifer, floodplain, and watershed. The next two are really together, but if you consider the steps that the DNR may have to take with us and Brandon, if there's two wastewater plants that are discharging in a very short or close proximity on the Big Sioux River, that they could raise both of our standards to make sure that we don't degrade the Big Sioux River. So instead of harnessing the economy of scale of regional systems, decentralizing this could actually ultimately raise both of our costs. Limited funding, we're all competing for the same low interest loans that are provided and grants that are provided by the state. And then again, quality of life, odors will be more of an issue with an open cell lagoon than with a closed system pumping all to Sioux Falls. All right, this is I think a key story and set of data, because when we get asked about the regional rates and is it fair, I'll just step you through quickly about how we actually set the regional component. Every one of your bills has a regional component in your wastewater charge. So just starting in the first column off to the left, Harrisburg, Brandon, Sioux Falls, Renner, and Prairie Meadows, we are all considered regional customers, even Sioux Falls. So then we start off, that component is $3.65 per thousand. Now when we take on Harrisburg, Brandon, Renner, and Prairie Meadows waste, we're taking on their risk. So we've put in place a risk premium. It's about 9% as it calculates today. It's about 36 cents per thousand, but it allows us to absorb that risk and manage that risk. The next column is equalization credit. One of the things that when we have issues like we had this last year in June with 15 inches of rain, we have extreme high amounts of flow come into the wastewater plant. When we have customers like Brandon, and they were able to meet our needs this time for I think a little bit over a week, when they have lagoons, they can actually hold or store, we call it equalization. And so if they were to, even if they were to pump all their wastewater to Sioux Falls and maintain those lagoons just as they are, they could, I'm sure they could certainly clean them up, turf them, they could be used as flex soccer fields, dog parks, things of that nature. But just maintaining those assets that in the 3-5 years that we have to call them and say, start holding your wastewater, we're getting too much wastewater at the plant, we actually provide a credit system for that. So then we can give them an offset on their bill continuously of 44 cents a thousand. The strength credit right now, Harrisburg's lagoons are still doing what they're designed to do, and so they actually can get a strength credit. If their lagoons can actually treat their wastewater, that's less chemical for us to add, and then all we're really doing is wheeling their water through the system. So then the next column is regional customer rates. So as you go through and you consider risk, equalization, and strength, Harrisburg's component of their rates, that's a regional piece, is $3.02. Brandon's is $3.57. Sioux Falls is $3.65, and Renner and Prairie Meadows are $4.01. When you then take their total customer rate, which is the second from the last, and you just take that minus the regional component, you're left with this local system rate. And so the combination of Harrisburg's rates, for example, are $3.02 for the regional piece. Their local costs are $3.68 to roll up to $6.70 per thousand. Brandon's today are $3.57 for the regional component, $4.43 for their other component to have a total flow rate to their customers of $8. The city of Sioux Falls, again, and I think I just bring this up more to just have us recognize harnessing the economy of scale. Our regional component is $3.65. Our local component is 83 cents for an adjusted rate to our customers of $4.48. So again, a very open, a very fair system. We're recognizing people for equalization and strength credits, but treating everyone equal. Why is regionalization? Our recommendation, it allows you to pay as you go. Every house that they add, they just pay us a system development charge, which is just under $2,400. They don't have to take on $15+ million worth of debt. and then hope that this solution works for them for their design period, hopefully that they don't have effects on the environment. No upfront costs, no debt payments, capacity is always available. Environmentally correct land purchase for this new lagoon site south of Brandon, again, has higher environmental constraints. There's development near it. With the watershed protection area, protecting of groundwater in this area is paramount. And then just the fact that we're so close to the Iowa border, it's our expectation that the South Dakota DNR and the Iowa DNR will be evaluating this permit. In summary, and last slide, signing up for regional wastewater is what we've always said is voluntary. Brandon today has told us that they're not ready for a long-term agreement. They wanted this short-term agreement to allow them to bridge while they do their due diligence, ultimately site their new facility and construct if the archaeology study comes back clear. Sioux Falls still desires to provide Brandon an opportunity to make the right decision for Brandon and the region. And again, I believe it's too much risk to put on their customers. It's also too much risk to put on this region. And the reason that we put the multiplier on this intermediate contract is we have to start capturing the cost of capacity that Brandon is using.
Mark,
thank you. Do you have any questions?
Council, any questions? Yeah, Councilor Staggers.
Mark, did you give this kind of presentation to the Brandon City Council?
I've asked to speak to the Brandon City Council about 4 different times, and so at this point I've not been invited.
I see, because I guess I'm kind of surprised.
Mm-hmm.
You're giving us this presentation when you should be giving it to Brandon.
Well, I've had a number of meetings with the City of Brandon, and at this point in time, now that they've moved to a point from study to actually, if this last piece of due diligence to, if the archaeology study is clear, is what they told us at our last meeting, that they will be moving forward to build the open cell lagoon systems. And it's important, I think, for us as a community to understand this because it is within a half mile of our growth area.
Yeah.
It's not an easy topic.
Yeah, because I guess the way I look at it is, if they want to do it, let them go ahead and do it.
Mm-hmm.
And they pay the consequences. And but yeah, I think it would be a good idea if you could actually speak to them to give them this point of view.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Councilor Karski.
Just curious, Mark, I don't know who could answer this, but you know, the parts that are redlined out in the contract, is it possible that they are looking at another location and that's why they redlined it, or what's the reason? Why would you redline this out?
I did have a conversation with the mayor last night after council, and the explanation was that they didn't want to be bound to that parcel. They did tell us that that is the primary parcel. And so I just asked, okay, what was the discussion at council? And they said, well, they don't want to be bound to not being able to go maybe a quarter mile to the east or a quarter mile to the south. When I spoke with city administrator today, Brian Reed, he said they asked about questions like, what if this facility was moved a mile east? But operationally, you'd have to then pump your wastewater a mile east and then pump it back to the river. That doesn't make operational sense to me, but I'd have to learn more. You would also, I think, have a higher challenge of siting a lagoon in the county than ultimately if they were able to. One of the preferences we heard is that if it's contiguous, then they can annex it, and then they can put those permits in place, if you will. They don't have to go to the county for siting a lagoon out in the county.
Councilor Mbach.
Thank you, Mark. You've worked really hard on this, and it shows. I appreciate your work, and I appreciate your diligence on behalf of citizens, not just in Sioux Falls. It shows. A couple of questions. First of all, what are you asking us to vote on? Are you asking us to vote on the agreement as you proposed it, or the agreement as it came back from the Brandon City Council?
Since this is only the first reading, I would just ask you to recognize that, and then we'd like to sit down with Brian and his team and Diane to see if we can come up with alternate language that they would not strike out and include the map.
Okay. Then I guess I just have so many questions, but I just don't. I acknowledge it's first reading. I would just comment that I can't disagree with Councilor Staggers at this point. I think, if they want to do this, let's let them do it. But when we get down to that point where it's within a half a mile of our citizens, that's when we start to have issues as a Sioux Falls City Council. So that's my comment.
Council, would anybody want to set a date of hearing, second reading for Wednesday, November 12th for item 27?
So moved, Erpenbach.
Second, Karski.
Councilor Box made that motion, seconded by Councilor Karski. Councilor Anderson, Jr.
I guess just to reply to Councilor Erfenbach on this, a couple of my major concerns of the placement of this is the aquifer, the Beaver Creek, and the Sioux River, which all would impact us greatly. Mark, just a couple quick questions. In this whole process, as they move forward, where is there, do you see, is there some stumbling blocks? The DNR or maybe the county? Do they have to get any type of permits or anything from either one of those groups?
Yes, they for sure have to get their plans reviewed, and they would have to get a discharge permit. They have to, they would go to, this is called a continuous discharge. So they have to essentially submit this technology that they want to have, just these open cell lagoons, and then also prove to them that they can meet the effluent standards. And again, now our concern is wastewater systems get upset. And so then what's your, how is this designed to be conservative? Will they then say, this is such a short stretch of the Big Sioux River that we need to raise both of your treatment standards up? So, because there is some natural degradation of wastewater effluent that breaks down in the Big Sioux River, the sun shines, hits it. But if they're trying to evaluate multiple discharge points like Sioux Falls and Brandon, and potentially others, their role is to protect the Big Sioux River so they could ultimately raise both of our treatment standards. It could end up costing both of our cities more.
If I may.
Please, Councilor.
And also, last spring, this whole area was underwater.
Yes.
That they're showing about 4 feet. So there's a major concern right there. It's if they do build it, they're going to have to bring in a large amount of fill just to make the barriers high enough for approval. My question is, how many gallons of wastewater can one of these ponds hold, and how long does it take it to treat it so that it can be released back into the environment?
I can get you that. I don't know their specific.
Do that in the second reading then, I guess.
I can do my best for you that. I think one of the keys was, again, the original study was cited for 1.1 million gallons per day. Our review and our expert peer review concluded, and they agreed that it actually should be sized at 2 million. I'm not sure if like the graphics and some of those things have been updated in their study that I could readily get them. I'll do my best.
And then last one. You said in your presentation, December of 2013, they increased their rates. That had nothing to do with our agreement with them. Am I correct?
To my knowledge, that's correct. One of the components of the study showed that if they borrow X amount of money to build this new lagoon system, and they do collection system improvements, meaning in front of our houses, they rolled all that up and then raised the rates to enact what came out of the wastewater study. One of the comments I know was raised and has been raised by their council that we've raised their rates significantly. And so today we did graph both rates of what the city of Sioux Falls rates have done over the last 20 years and what the city of Brandon's rates that we charge them, and they are almost a mirror image of each other. And so we've treated them just like we've treated our own team. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilor Jameson.
If I could, I don't know if it's appropriate, but I know that there's representatives here of Brandon. Mark, you had interpreted the comments and reasoning for the council's decision in Brandon. I'm just wanting to make sure that those were accurate, as long as
Sure.
we're here. If
This
Brian,
is a first reading, Councilor Jameson.
right. Well, we can linger on. with
We'd
what-
have testimony the second reading.
You want, okay, very good.
Okay.
Well, then I'd like to add one other comment then. The contract ends here, and as they were proposed in the past, multipliers would have been in effect, right? If we would have-
Multipliers, the letter that I sent them, absent a long-term contract, is multipliers would have started January 1. We met with the city of Brandon. They asked us to not put multipliers on for a year. I said, I can't do that. What do you need? They said, we specifically need time to do an archaeology study. So then we did a sliding scale no later than July 1 of 2015 that the multiplier would start. And then I was taken back to see that part was redlined out of the agreement.
Right, what I don't want to see lost in this discussion, at least tonight, is that we backed off for 6 months to allow them to get their due diligence done. And by all accounts, that's a goodwill gesture on our part.
Right.
There's a lot of concerns that we have with other parts of this, but there's a lot of things at play here, and I hope that they get worked out in the meantime.
Thank you.
A roll call vote, please.
Council members Anderson, Erickson.
Yes.
Erpenbach.
Yes.
Jameson.
Yes.
Karski.
Yes.
Kylie.
Yes.
Rolfing.
Yes.
Staggers.
Yes.
That is passed 8-0. Item 28.
First reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, approving water tank lease agreements, Menlo Tower.
Good evening. Darren Freeze, Public Works Water Division. Item 28 is in reference to communications equipment installed on Menlo Avenue Water Tower. There's 4 leases. They're all from different tenants, all for the same site. All 4 tenants have had their equipment on Menlo Tower for almost a decade. All 4 agreements are identical in language and terms, with the terms being our program standard 5 years initial term with 3 5 years automatic renewals. We would appreciate your support of this item and these agreements.
Council, would anybody want to set a date of hearing and second reading for Wednesday, November 12th?
So moved. Second, Karski.
Thank you. Councilor Anderson Jr. has made that motion, seconded by Councilor Karski. A roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
Erickson.
Yes.
Erpenbach.
Yes.
Jameson.
Yes.
Karski.
Yes.
Kylie.
Yes.
Rolfing.
Yes.
Staggers.
Yes.
That is passed 8-0. Item 29.
A resolution approving angle parking and extended furniture zones on Main Avenue.
Hello, Heath Hofteser, Principal Traffic Engineer for the City of Sioux Falls. We're bringing forward this resolution in response to the informational meeting from last Tuesday where we had overwhelming positive comments on the Main Avenue Road Diet and the desire to see it kept in place. And this is basically making it permanent, making it a permanent decision to allow the ability to keep angled parking on Main Avenue. It allows us to go forward and make improvements over the next week here so that it can stay in place better throughout the winter, and we'll start working on permanent improvements in the spring. I can answer any questions you have, and Dustin Powers from Community Development's here also for any questions you may have concerning it.
Heath, Dustin, thank you. Is there anybody in the audience who want to speak to this item? Council?
Move approval, Erickson.
Second, Anderson.
Councilor Erickson has made a motion to approve this item, seconded by Councilor Anderson Jr. Councilor?
Thank you. Just one question, Heath, is that I noticed you're going with straight-in parking instead of diagonal parking. Is that to get more spaces, or you were saying it was safer? What's...
We're making the switch from 60-degree angle parking to 45-degree angle parking. So it's actually it's a little bit closer to parallel than we are right now, and it moves the sight line about 4 feet. I want to say 4 feet closer to the curb, so that the viewing for the drivers when they're backing out or at intersections, it's going to open up more sight lines for them. So.
A roll call vote, please.
Council members Anderson.
Yes.
Erickson.
Yes.
Erpenbach.
Yes.
Jameson.
Yes.
Karski.
Yes.
Kylie.
Yes.
Rolfing.
Yes.
Staggers.
Yes.
That is passed 8-0. Item 30.
Report of the October 28, 2014 Notice of Transfer of Appropriations within Major Organizational Units.
Very good. Council, I do want to recognize University of Sioux Falls students. I think it's the most that I've ever seen since I've been in office, 4.5 years. This extra credit must be really important. But I wholeheartedly commend you for being here tonight. This was a really interesting meeting. I don't want to minimize this. There was one thing that happened tonight that I think was probably the longest, but I think one of the most important. And it was, here you have two cities side by side, and yet we're trying to work together, and we're also impacting each other. But we are also a state where cities can decide their own fate. So this will be interesting how this plays out. And I would encourage you to follow this over the next week or two. And who knows what's going to happen, and I'm sure Councilor Staggers will keep you in the loop too. But if you wouldn't mind, I think, again, to be the largest USF crowd we've ever seen, we're going to give you a round of applause. And good luck getting in line and having Councilor Staggers sign your papers. Council, a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Councilor Urbanbach's made that motion, seconded by Councilor Rolfing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This meeting is adjourned, Sioux Falls. Make it a great, great night.